So she walked like an Egyptian. Talking of Egypt,
Yeah.
in one of the libraries in Hamburg, in one of
Mm.
their university's libraries, they found an ancient text.
Mm.
Now, do you remember a few months ago we did a podcast about the Herculaneum scrolls?
Yes. Yes.
About 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, using AI, they
Mm.
found this ancient text,
Mm.
which supposedly describes Jesus performing a miracle when he was a kid, when he was a child,
Mm.
right? It's on a separate piece of papyrus,
Yeah.
and the text is written in Greek. 13 lines of text
Mm.
on this old piece of papyrus.
Right.
So, of course, they deciphered it, and it describes how Jesus, as a youngster, around about 6 years old,
Mm.
he was making 12 clay sparrows on the banks of a river using the mud and
Yeah.
making these little models of sparrows. And Joseph, he scolded him.
Mm.
He said he should not be working on the Sabbath because he was Jewish,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And Jesus then said to the clay sparrows that he was making, "Fly
Mm.
away as living birds."
Mm.
And they did. And they turned into real sparrows and flew off.
Mm.
Now, like I said, Jesus was around 5 years old at the time. The text was a
Yeah.
fragmented part of the infancy gospel of Thomas, which I
Right.
think might make it into the big book, right? Gabriel Nachi Macedo, one of the people who found the text, said the document was from ancient Egypt and was
Mm.
round about 1,600 years old. That's what he said. He said that the document was ignored for such a long time because people thought it was a letter or a shopping list, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So people in ancient Egypt wrote things down to go to the shops,
Mm. Well.
as one would
Yes.
in
Yeah.
modern Europe. But after letting AI scan it, it seemed that it was part of a writing exercise in a school or monastery. So somebody
Mm.
must have said to the class, write a passage about whatever you want, and somebody
Mm.
said that child,
Yeah.
he performed this miracle. Interesting thing about this is that the date that the papyrus was placed in this library where they found it is unknown,
Mm.
but it was probably after 2001, after the year 2001.
All right.
I must admit that there are some alarm bells ringing in my
Mm.
ears about. Well, first of all, when the papyrus was
Yeah.
placed into the library,
Mm.
because normally if you've got a 1,600 year piece of papyrus and you want to leave it in the library,
Mm.
they'd log it down.
Yeah.
They'd have to log it down. It's an
Mm.
artifact.
Yes.
Shopping list or not, it's an
Yeah.
important artifact.
Well, yeah, it has to be established. Yes.
So that to me was the first alarm bell that
Mm.
rang off. I saw this, and you know, it was only discovered recently.
Mm.
I mean, if they needed AI to decipher it, how did anybody know that it was probably just a letter or a shopping list? You know what I mean?
Yes.
To ignore it. So it sort of all sort of forms into something that's a little bit too perfect, if you know what I mean, to create. And there were two guys actually that the name of the other guy escapes me, but they're gonna, of course, they're gonna publish an article to go in the magazine. Apparently, we were on about books the other day. You
Yeah.
know, there are books and literature about everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, there's a magazine out about hieroglyphy and
Well,
ancient Egyptian texts,
mm,
which I imagine that to keep that going, to publish that every week, you've got
yeah.
to have some really serious scholars.
Well, there are. Yeah. Yeah. I've read some, a couple. Yeah.
So, so with this text and this papyrus not having a very good provenance, as they
Yeah.
say, that just leaves me a little bit, with a bad taste in my mouth. But who am I? I'm only a mere mortal that reads these things.
Yeah.
Over to
Okay.
you.
Right. Okay. Well, obviously, as a Catholic stroke, well, Christian stroke Catholic, yeah, I'm going to speak. Look at this. Yeah, I will look at it objectively. Yeah, I mean, the first recorded miracle, as far as we know, of Jesus was when he turned water into wine. Yeah, which at school we were asked, what does this signify? And I said, we'll invite Jesus to all your parties, I suppose. I got into a little bit of trouble for that. No, I didn't. It's another story, but yeah, it's old joke. But yeah, it's first recorded now. Yeah, there's been. It's not unknown that this has been done, that people have slotted things into historical libraries and done this wonderful discovery later over a period of time. Yeah, there's something in the novel, the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown.
Yeah.
Good read. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad read if you're looking for an adventure novel. From a religious point of view, it's a load of nonsense. And I mean that quite honestly. I've done some study in this, and yeah, Christians and non-Christians and everyone else were jumping all over it. And he wrote a novel. He did his job as an author, as a novelist. Fair play to him. Made a few quid. Didn't debunk my faith, as far as I'm concerned, actually made people interested in it. God moves in mysterious ways. It's a. I mean. Okay, let's imagine, okay, I mean, who was Jesus? I believe he was a man. I also believe he was not entirely of this world, a hybrid, if you like. Well, be careful what I say here, because I could be blasphemous, but yeah, he was God made man. Imagine a 6-year-old, and he still had human tendencies with the ability to have a bit of fun. Yeah? I mean, if you're a 6-year-old with them sort of powers, wouldn't you do that? Make it into some birds or something to play with? You need to. I imagine you need to practice somehow. But I'm not saying this is real, but I'm just looking at it from a different viewpoint. I saw something about this, but I didn't bother reading it because, like I say, as a Catholic, I have an organisation called the Vatican, the Holy See, which tries to authenticate things. Okay, you can have a view on the Vatican and nothing is perfect. Is the Vatican devout of God or is it man? That's another debate. But who do examine these kinds of things, it has to be collaborated. We've gone past the point of somebody tells me something or gives me an artifact that, this is part of the true cross, which most churches, Catholic churches around the world have. I think if you collected them all together, you probably have about 2,000 crosses or something. Yeah. I mean, we don't know how big the cross was. Yeah.
Pure in shroud.
Yeah. Well, again, yeah. I'd like to believe it's genuine. I'd like to believe it's genuine.
We all would. We all would.
Yeah.
Save a lot of argument.
I mean, yeah, you got these artifacts around the world. Don't forget, Constantine's Wava went around collecting things, and then there's other things. The Spear of Destiny which was the blade that was meant to pierce Jesus in the side, or Christ or Jesus, depending on your viewpoint, into the side to prove he was dead, because he actually died quite quickly on the cross. And yeah, this was floating about, and the Nazis took an interest in it, thinking that if they could have this artifact at the head of their armies, they might win. Again, they've done some research on it and found out, yeah, it's not from the period at all. Yeah, and these things will appear. They have to be investigated. We don't know. Like you say, it could be a story that somebody told. We can argue about how much of the Bible you can actually corroborate. A lot of the New Testament can be corroborated. Remember that a lot of the New Testament was written 40 to 60, 70 years after the events as well,
More than
by
that.
oral tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be, it's always going to be a debate. How do we prove it historically true? I imagine you could tell from papyrus its age, maybe carbon date, but again,
No,
that's destructive.
you can tell when you can tell when written.
When it was,
but when, how long it was after Jesus has died,
yeah,
is in debate.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, it was a story about a man that, don't forget, when Jesus has died, he had no authority. He was
a political, what we'd call a political
activist.
Activist. I was about to say jihadist, but no,
it's a political.
That was
No, jihadist is sorry, yeah, slightly.
That was a bit severe.
Can we steer away from that? Yeah, that's especially for a Jew being a jihadist, that would be an interesting concept. Yeah, I mean, it's proof that Jesus existed as near contemporary. What he did as a 5-6-year-old. I mean, he grew up with a stepfather, if you believe that he wasn't this. I mean, Joseph was probably a very good man. There was his future wife, seemingly getting a child somehow, but he stayed with him. I think he was an honourable man. Yeah, I could imagine him. Yeah,
he was. Some might call him a cuckold.
Well, she would have, yeah, his future wife would have been condemned to death, basically. I mean, the Jews weren't really officially allowed to kill anyone, but yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm going to put it there. I do believe that he was of divine birth. Okay, or divine, yeah. Yeah, no, it'd be nice to think that, yeah, there was Joseph there having a go, because don't forget, it's all about tradition, working on the Sabbath. Jesus' later life got accused of working on the Sabbath by performing miracles, making people better, basically being a surgeon or a doctor. Okay, we can look at it this way. I mean, did he convince people they were better, or did he, inspiration or something else? Was he a good motivational speaker? Probably all the above. Yeah, it's always going to be have a debate about this. I think it's a very interesting thing. If it can be corroborated, like you say, how long after the event was it actually written? How would anyone know? There's just Jesus and Joseph by the riverbank, doing things. A 5 or 6-year-old would not probably be aware, although they started to do study from about 4 years old. And remember, Jesus, when he was 12 years old, disappeared into the temple for a day or 2 days when his parents were looking for him, and was debating scripture with the rabbis and senior religious people in the temple. They found him. So he'd evidently had some quite intense study and were apparently given a good account of himself. I mean, even today, if you get the young Jewish people are encouraged, particularly males, are encouraged to question what their beliefs are, debate what the scripture actually is all about.